emergency for the first time in about
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus. You have accessed entry 283.JB0306. Certificate number 25901. The Cotsworth Calendar.
Oh, lousy smarch weather.
Is this the name of a racehorse?
Cotsworth Calendar. It sounds like a door-to-door guy. Like, I'm here with Cotsworth Calendars, ma'am, and I'd like to change your household.
I bet you're using the old calendar.
We have, if you're a luminous slug listening to these entries in 3000 AD thematically, this is probably one of 600 shows we've done about our
various calendar,
bizarre and failed calendars of
calendre.
Our era. We did a show on the French Revolutionary calendar,
right?
And so when
we've done a show about the Advent calendar, which hasn't aired yet,
we might do a Christmas show at the Advent calendar. Who knows? We can do a show about
what are some other calendar?
Farside calendar.
Farside calendar is great.
We're just going to go through. What if we had a podcast where we just went through a random desk calendar?
Quote of the day calendar.
We have. I do a New York Times day calendar every day.
What does that mean? You do a calendar?
Well, it's a puzzle of the day.
Oh!
Right now, I'm in the middle of 2017. It's like It's like I'm finally binge watching Sopranos or something. I am all in on the New York Times crosswords of spring 2017.
And are they like the ones that air in the newspaper? I guess they don't air in a newspaper.
No, they do.
That's
the word.
The ones that appear in the newspaper, are the Mondays easier than the Fridays?
Yes, they're shifted in time, but not by week. So I do a Monday puzzle on a Monday.
Yeah.
A Tuesday puzzle on a Tuesday.
Okay.
You can see where this is going.
No.
On Wednesday,
Go
I
on.
often do a Wednesday puzzle.
Sure, and illustrate it further.
Thursday, they're getting a little trickier.
Sure,
That's
they
when
are.
I do a Thursday puzzle. So, but it's, I can't participate in the discourse around whether today's New York Times puzzle is hard or good or whatever anybody on Twitter is saying, or what John Hodgman complaining about today's puzzle.
You're inhibited in a social media context.
Yes.
In sharing your puzzling.
Because that's what you want to do.
Yeah, of course.
Immediately after you solve a crossword puzzle, you want to hear 100 people complaining about it.
I may have told this anecdote before about one of the things that really bonded me to you was the time that you came over. You were there at my house for some reason. I don't know what it was.
Uninvited.
Collecting your bag of geld.
Would you like the Cotsworth calendar?
And you looked down on my coffee table and there was the New York Times Sunday crossword and it was half or 3/4 finished. And you said, "Oh, the Sunday crossword, how's it going?" And I was like, "Oh, you know how crosswords are. The Thursday, I like a Thursday. I'm not so sure about a Friday. The Saturdays are pretty frustrating, but the Sundays, I usually make my way through it." And you stood there patiently listening to me talk about it first, and then you said, "I've never failed to finish a crossword," and you said it in that distinctive way that made me despise you.
This really makes me sound like either best case scenario, I'm extremely spectrumy in this story. I have never failed to finish a crossword, John. but no,
what's the worst case scenario?
In fact, I'm just an a-hole in this story.
Yeah, and then you went on to detail your experiences at the Crossword World Championship and
pulled out the trophy, which I, for some reason, had on me.
Yeah, and then for a while, you actually, in texts and stuff, you would offer to help me finish crosswords. you were really doubling down on it. You knew what an a-hole you were, and you were really gonna. And yeah, that was really.
Weren't you texting me? Weren't you like, what's 26 across?
I absolutely was not. I do not try and solve crosswords the way I'm sure some people do, which is to
complete at all costs, right?
Well, yeah, to look stuff up or, why would you do that? Why would you do a crossword if you weren't trying to do it?
I am the pathological extension of that, where I will literally just have some, little brain teaser I happen to see somewhere on a Stuckey's placemat or something. And I will just determinedly, doggedly not look it up for weeks.
Yeah.
Waiting for the answer to appear.
Yeah.
And when it does finally appear, it is, the greatest pleasure. There's no reason for any pleasure of the flesh. No wine, woman, or song necessary if you can solve the word puzzle you saw in the paper 8 days ago.
Yeah, unlike you, I sometimes take a couple of days to finish a crossword. And sometimes I have the Baader-Meinhof situation where reading a completely unrelated thing, I'll see the answer to one of the, it'll be, the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse, of course. And I'm always like kind of angry. I'm angry when I discover the answer out in the world because I want it to be.
Oh, you didn't want to stumble on it.
No, I want it to come from my mind.
No, but that's another way. You are the universe. You're right. Your mind is present in all of creation around. Just take the Buddhist approach that
Shanti.
that when the universe delivers the answer to you, that is coming from within as well.
All right. Okay.
Within you and without you. Like last night, for example. We're getting pretty far afield from Moses Cotsworth, whom we have not even mentioned yet.
Okay, well, you just mentioned him, so what is that? 6 minutes in.
But last night I was looking at a thing where you would have you would see clues for 3 different words, which are neighbors in the dictionary. They're alphabetically adjacent.
Oh,
and you try to figure out what they are. And in this case, I think it was an 11-letter word for a numbskull, a 9-letter word for a glutton, and then 2 4-letter words for some kind of Chinese food. And I fell asleep thinking about that, and this morning I still don't have the answer.
Chump, chow mein. No.
Oh, it is. It's certainly chow mein.
Chow mein.
2 4-letter words.
Yeah.
So the word for it's a chowder head.
Chowder head. Okay.
What's between
was the third? What was the other clue?
A glutton. A chow hound.
Chow hound. Thank you.
I was hoping we could.
Chowder, chow hound, chow mein.
I was hoping we could.
See, it just came. The universe.
I was hoping to leave that as an exercise to the viewer, but you were too fast for me.
Yeah. Fastest gunslinger in the West. Word slinger.
So there we go. Well, I'll have to think of something else to tease and tantalize the listener with.
I've started to do I haven't yet subscribed to the New York Times Puzzle Bank, which I know you spend not only probably 6 hours a day over there trying to complete their acrostics or whatever, but I actually catch you doing it sometimes during the recording of this show. You're looking at your phone and I think you're researching some topic, and then I realize you're just doing a puzzle.
Doing the jumble.
I'm like, come on, Ken. But you do, how many hours a day are you doing puzzles on your phone?
Oh, like the New York Times spelling bee.
Any puzzle.
If I'm watching something my wife wants to watch that I think is boring, I will probably be doing New York Times spelling bee on my phone. If I'm in a car and not driving, I will probably be doing the New York Times spelling bee.
How many other hours? I want a total number of hours and minutes per day.
The thing is, I can do any New York Times crossword in under 10 minutes. So it's less on a Monday.
Right.
So look, 5 minutes on the toilet with a New York Times crossword.
Right. That's 5.
Probably about an hour with the spelling bee on my phone.
Okay.
And then maybe at the end of the day, like just to fall asleep, 10 minutes trying to think of an 11-letter word for a numbskull.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that add up to? It's
an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's more time than I spend on literally any other pursuit: religion, my family, my country,
right? Sports,
exercise, yeah,
crafting.
So I guess
how much crafting do you do?
I do quite a bit of decoupage, but that's only in between puzzles.
Grooming.
Almost no time grooming. Clearly,
right, 3 minutes grooming. Yeah.
I have it really down to an art. Like it really is like boom, 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 9 minutes. shower and all ointments, and I'm good.
Ointments? How many ointments do you apply?
I am in my 40s, John.
This is something we should do a show on.
Like I gotta have mentholatum on my knees.
Right. Frankincense.
No, not really.
Myrrh.
I have some like cocoa butter that I like hands, ankles. It's really like my skincare regimen is like a 12-second thing.
Hands, ankles, knees, and toes.
Yeah, 9 seconds if somebody's waiting. But the reason why I mentioned calendars is because we have done the French Republican calendar on the show. And when Morgan suggested we do a show on the International Fixed Calendar, the invention of 19th century reformer Moses Cotsworth, I thought, well, we already did a thing about crazy failed calendars.
Yes, we did.
If you'll recall, the French Republican calendar was mostly an attempt to secularize the calendar, to get rid of all the saints' days, right? So instead of Saint Cecilia and Saint Swithin and Saint Bartholomew, you would have like Sorghum Day and Peridot Day and Groundhog Day.
But like all revolutions, it also sought to remake the world.
Year one would be the year we came up with this calendar,
right?
The most important thing that's ever happened, obviously.
We're going to eliminate Sundays, so it's only been a 6-day week.
That's true. Well, they were going to decimalize the calendar. That weakens the church. So you get a 10-day. There's three 10-day weeks a month. 12 months of 3 weeks, 3 10-day weeks each,
and then a rump month.
Yeah, the problem is that gives you 360 days, so you have to have a 5 to 6 day
party month,
kind of festival things tacked at the end.
Festivus.
It's a Festivus at the end. And
I kind of don't mind that. Except I don't want to work an 8-day week and have 2 days off.
Well, this was kind of the problem. People were, now that the day of rest doesn't have the weight of the church behind it, and it's only once every 10 days, people realized they were getting the shaft. Plus, I think in theory, you were supposed to get a half a day off in the middle of the week. So,
half a day
if you get 1 day off for 7 days, then you get a day and a half for 10 days. The math's not terrible. But the problem is nobody would take that. Nobody would give you that half day off. So.
What it should be is 4 days at work, a day off. 4 days at work, a day off. I mean, this is the Rodrickian calendar.
Wait, you only want...
And that's 10 days.
You only want 2 days off per 10 days? That's worse a deal than we're getting now.
Oh, okay. 3 days at work, 2 days off. 3 days at work, 2 days off.
Yeah, I like that. Aren't they going to... Didn't Spain or somebody just announce they're going to try the Rodrickian calendar?
I feel like everybody I know has been working that calendar for a long, long time. It's just they spend 2 days sitting around.
I know plenty of people in publishing that are hard to get a hold of on a Friday.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, I think Spain is trying out they announced they're like, vamos a usar el calendario de John Roderick.
Spain has already been doing that because from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., there's no way to get anything.
They're keeping that and they're losing Friday. So the French Revolutionary calendar did not take, and I think a lot of it was...
like a lot of things that resulted from the French Revolution.
But I think if it had been good, it could have survived, because this would have been... It could have just been a disconnected reform. It wasn't necessarily tainted by all the beheadings.
Well, I think also it predated the Industrial Revolution by just enough that there wasn't yet labor.
You're just annoying farmers.
Yeah, there wasn't this sense of like
the calendar force. Could even be regimented.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think if it had happened 30 years later as part of some mid-19th century sort of sweeping revolution, maybe it would have. Why didn't Marx propose a calendar? Now, it's one more criticism of Marx I have.
This is literally my only problem with Marx's Leninism. Why do they still have a 7-day calendar? Come on. This is the story we're going to examine today. What if somebody had tried a modern reform calendar in the 19th century? Because, the end of the 19th, early the 20th century, this is the time of reform and progressivism and all kinds of efficiencies and changes that are going to redraw society for the better and bring us into the future.
Antitrust, labor movements. I mean, everything was happening.
And some of these things were literally changes to the work week, right?
Esperanto.
We need to have all the days of the week named for Esperanto.
Right. This was the work week.
Yes.
And also the reform of child labor
And if religion was what swamped the French Republican calendar, not having the clergy on board, a little too early for that, maybe we can do it now, you know?
Right.
Maybe the early 20th century is the time for a more secular time measurement.
The New York Times literally said God is dead. Not yet. Not at this point. Later.
You always quote Elton John on this point. And last time I got in trouble because I said it was Daniel, and I think it's Levon.
Levon.
Yeah, it's Levon. In fact, it is Time magazine that said God is dead. Elton John is misremembering. And
poetic license. New York Times sounds so much. It just rolls off the tongue.
He's not familiar with our American publications.
Yeah. Why didn't he say the Manchester Guardian?
Punch magazine said God is dead. Hello said God is dead. And also, have you seen who Pippa Middleton is with?
No, it was Viz magazine that said God is dead.
Viz Q. So our story of the 20th century attempt to reform the calendar begins with the 1859 birth of one Moses Cotsworth, who is a poor Yorkshire lad. His dad's a farmer who dies when Moses is but a wee bairn of 2. His mom heads to the big city, which in Yorkshire is York, to try to work as a domestic servant.
She left the Shire.
Right. Like many hobbits before her. She wandered to the big city, but not of Bree, not of Rivendell, not even of Minas Tirith.
Nope, but York.
Of York to work, probably ironing things with a flat piece of metal.
Yes, right. Emptying chamber pots.
And she leaves young Moses behind.
Wait a minute.
In the Dales.
By himself?
With his grandparents.
Okay.
He's 2. You can't, even in Yorkshire, John, like the age limit on that is 3.5, as you know.
That's a common technique. Leave them behind with the grandparents.
Yes, the history is silent on what the grandparents thought of all this. I'm sure they were, they had no teeth or tendons or anything because they were probably in their late 40s.
That's right. They're from, this is the north of England. So, the north has different rules.
Yes. And it remembers. In this case, Moses turned out to be one of these remarkable, we don't believe in the great man theory of history here on Omnibus, except when we study one of these just remarkable prodigy children who from birth is destined to be a huge weirdo.
Right. And here he is, he's stacking blocks and it turns out it's a RNA.
I guess that's the weird man theory of history. Like the bizarre,
we do subscribe to
bizarre
that.
child who owns 6 different years of the Guinness Book of World Records.
Wait a minute, you're describing yourself.
Yes, that's exactly right. I am the epical man. His grandparents have just a very simple little country cottage, but they do have an oak chest that has the Bible, which is of interest to Cotsworth. His family is Quakers. He's a religious person his whole life.
And Shakespeare's sonnets.
Even better, almanacs.
Okay.
Because his farming family has to know.
Right, of course.
When you plant the seed and what's your young one's thing?
When you grow the seed and when you eat the seed.
Right. That's the almanac has 3 sections.
Right.
And of course the almanacs have all this calendrical and astronomical and astrological stuff, which it appeals to his rigorous, fact-hungry young mind.
Yeah, nothing appeals to your fact mind like astrology.
Did you read almanacs as a kid?
I did.
I sure did. I got one every year. Boy, in December, the new almanac's coming out.
Well, after you've read the encyclopedia 3 or 4 times, what are you going to do?
The almanac is like the encyclopedia on crack.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have any of the nice pictures of each state bird or whatever. It's just like, look, here's a list. These suspension bridges are super long. Look, here's another list. Here are all the Heisman winners.
Yeah.
It's perfect for a certain kind of weirdo. And that was true in the early 1860s
Did you read the Sears catalog the same way? Because I would read the almanac and then I would read the Sears catalog.
There is nothing more different between the ways I read the almanac and the ways I read the Sears catalog.
But you did.
For one thing, there were more than 6 pages of the almanac I read, which is not true of the Sears catalog.
Oh, that's right. You wouldn't read like whole sections of the Sears catalog, would you? I wouldn't.
It's just, it's bras and toys.
Underwear.
It's bras and toys.
Right.
And there's a gap in between. I don't even know what's in that tool and furniture section in between.
I read that stuff. Because it really comported with the almanac. Like
here's all the it's a list of adulthood basically.
Well, here's like surely in building a suspension bridge, you'd have to understand what these tools did.
And that there was an era where Sears was the definition of just all-encompassing objects.
Right.
If something existed, it would be in a Sears.
An almanac with pictures.
Whereas now, a Sears stands in for an empty place with nothing in it but an old guy with a stocking cap.
Incredible real estate. Have you seen? Surely you've seen the Sears building in Santa Monica, California. It's like it's this gorgeous temple.
Oh yeah,
sitting there completely empty. It should be turned into at least a roller rink.
The second saddest kind of building, a roller rink. So when Moses is old enough, having the almanacs having sparked in him a lifelong interest in the seasons, the passage, the procession of the constellations or whatever it is that precesses.
There's a time for every purpose under heaven.
Yeah, sure. And there's a for a young religious person, there's the religious resonances of understanding God's creation and the whirling of his spheres and skies and orbs and whatnot.
Right. Spheres and skies and orbs.
God's full of spheres and skies and orbs. That's what we love about him.
Yeah. It's just right there. It's on the title page of the Bible.
Great guy.
The Bible. Spheres and...
Perfect in all attributes. But what's appealing to a little kid is he's got all the spheres and skies and orbs.
Yeah, right. Orbs especially.
So when he goes to some sadly named, what is it? It's the School for Destitute Boys or something.
Oh, dear.
The Blue Coat School from Orphans and Destitute Boys, straight out of a
Blue Coat
of a Dickens novel. I'm sure maybe that's the uniform he wears.
Yeah, right. It's a free school, in other words.
Yes,
where they're gonna use the rod to make him not a pauper.
But he's gifted and immediately shows that even in this lousy environment, he is going to learn by hook or by crook. Like he teaches himself shorthand, even though it's not in the curriculum, by waiting for the other dumber children to read their selections out loud. And then as they're reading slowly, he has time to kind of practice a slow shorthand, which he gets better and better at.
Huh.
So their dunderheadedness, their chowderheadedness, to coin an 11-letter word.
There it is
His gain.
So he is... He's not a Damien who's riding around on a tricycle, like sending his mother over a banister. He's a good boy.
Oh yeah, he's a rule follower, a teacher's pet. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's a little too smart for the school that doesn't particularly care if these poor farm boys learn anything or not.
I know that feeling.
Yes, but he's clearly destined for better things.
Mm-hmm.
He takes he knows the civil service is his step out of the muddy farms.
Oh, right. Because it's not a path that you're required to have connections or
right.
you can test your way in.
So he gets all these civil service exams that only have the answers, and he's able to work backwards, even though he hasn't had any of the curriculum that would enable him to get these answers. He's able to work backwards from the answers to figure out how you would derive them from the questions, and therefore to go on to be able to do it himself.
Now I'm embarrassed that I didn't work harder.
You could have taken the Foreign Service exam at 23 and you would have been
the ambassador to Uzbekistan.
Exactly. Instead of, wandering across Europe in haystacks, you could have been in a nice room in Gabon with a ceiling fan.
I always felt like I should have taken the bar exam at some point just to see what happened.
Not too late.
But if I had reverse engineered the bar exam from all the answers, like answer B, torts. What could it be? What could the question have been?
Yeah, I think on the bar exam, you can't do the, over the years, people have said and thought many interesting things about torts. Opinions vary about. So his mathematical, rigorous mind, it becomes obvious, and soon he's doing the tithing for the local diocese, and he's working for a local colliery. And he ends up working for the Northeastern Railway as a clerk. Mm-hmm. And they've got so this being the age of innovation and efficiency, they've got a new division that's actually going to not just write things down as it comes in and then write out checks as they go out, but is actually going to analyze these statistics.
Do you remember
the beginning of big data? What
gauge that railroad used?
I don't understand why it doesn't say this in his. Will this actually get you involved in the story?
Well, no.
If we know the gauge of the,
I'm here still, but
New Eastern Railway.
I'm just wondering. This would have been an era where the New Eastern Railway might have also picked its own gauge for efficiency's
this
sake.
is the 1870s. This is one early ass railway.
Yeah, that's true.
So maybe it was a super weird gauge.
Yeah, every railroad had its own gauge at this point.
What was hard for him was not the, much as there were these inconsistencies in gauges between railways, what he found difficult was that statistics were impossible to organize and compare period over period, just running payroll or looking at passenger manifests or speeds or whatever it is, because the calendar was weird. Every month was a different length. Every month had a different, not every month, it's a different length. That would be weird. But many months are different lengths. Not every month is the same length. More to the point.
He should have reverted to using lies and damned lies, which is at least comports with the calendar.
He advanced through the lies and damn lies departments and landed in statistics. You know how, like, to this day, months are weird, right? Like, I once had to try to redesign a payroll app for the company I worked at.
Mm-hmm.
And
who hasn't?
Well, they should have I don't know why they didn't buy something. Why didn't they buy software for this? But they had a system in-house and they were going to keep it.
Yeah.
But they had decided to start paying, bi-monthly instead of semi-weekly or whatever.
But some of those months are different.
Yes. And so I had to write a system that, first of all, would support both systems so we could do the handoff. but also would just take into account all the weirdnesses of the calendar. And you think like, yeah, it's super easy. There's Q1,
There's
Q2, Q3, Q4.
Yeah.
But every month has a different number of certain days of the week, and some months have 2 paydays and some have 3.
Did you succeed in writing this program?
Yes, it was like the most challenging thing I ever did in my, 3 to 4 years at that company. It was the place I was working when I was on Jeopardy. And this was like the one time I had to do something I didn't know if I could do. And it was like the most interesting work because it was not drudgery. It was like, wait, how does the calendar work? Like how do we have to take into account leap years and bank holidays and, all the same stuff that was bugging Moses Cotsworth when he was trying to do quarterly reports in the 1870s.
Well, spoiler alert, apparently Moses Cotsworth didn't solve this problem because you were still trying to address it in 1999.
Exactly. If we had just figured this out in the 1930s, like Cotsworth wanted, we would not have. And this, have you had times in your life where you were annoyed by the calendar? Like I have, just people trying to figure out how many paydays are going to, if their rent is monthly, but their pay is weekly.
Yeah.
Like there's that, or
I haven't been paid by an outside entity since 1998. And my relationship to calendars is, as you know, from firsthand experience over the course of many years.
It's a little casual.
I don't really follow the calendar that closely. It's sort of there, and I know it's there. I know other people are interacting with it, and it kind of putters along.
It's got a far side panel.
And every once in a while, some alert will come that says, hey, this is a day that has something on it. And I go, oh, right.
And you're not talking about Arbor Day. You're talking about, federal income tax.
Right. Or like I'm supposed to meet Ken and do a show called Omnibus. It's right there in the calendar.
Yeah. I'm a freelancer, but I do a weekly quiz for a company that bills monthly. Like these connection quizzes I write, I often have to try to remember, wait, were there 9 or 10 of those? Because the calendar is more weird and complicated than we rely on it to be.
Now I'm realizing I am paid by Patreon every month, but of course it's always the first of the month, and that could sometimes vary by 3 days.
It could.
And wait a minute.
I'm
being cheated.
Not in February, you're not. In February, you're loving it. Well, I guess in early March, you're loving it.
Early March, I'm always loving it. That's the loving it month.
In an ecclesiastical sense, like if you were to be a church-going person, you would have to deal with the fact that some months have 4 Sundays and some have 5. I'm a Sunday school teacher.
Do you feel cheated?
I'm a Sunday school. Yeah. I'm getting less God in February and therefore fewer orbs.
Right. I would think you'd feel cheated that you were getting too much God on those 5 Sunday months.
Yeah. That's kind of what happens. I'm a Sunday school teacher and I have to remember, wait a second. I'm supposed to teach every other week, but this is a 5 Sunday month, which means there's going to be 3 weeks until I teach next, which means we're going to be in Romans, not Acts.
Oh, Jiminy Christmas.
That classic problem we all have.
Yeah.
When you're in Romans instead of Acts.
You've been teaching Sunday school long enough, I think. Don't you think it's time to take a break?
What should I switch to?
Well, I'm saying let a younger parishioner come up and take the reins. Don't be one of those people that's clogging the pipeline.
I organized a committee to find a new Sunday school teacher, and I ended up choosing myself.
Guess what? Guess who the best candidate was?
It turned out I was the perfect man for the job. And back to his almanac period, Cotsworth has been into calendars, like not just in the sense of Julian versus Gregorian, but like going back to the ancients. Yes. Like he went to Stonehenge to make measurements.
Calendar nerd.
And he went to Stonehenge on the equinox to see how it differed from the solstice and could the stones be lined up in a certain way. And talked to people Egyptologists who had been to Giza. Hey, did you measure the shadow of the pyramid? And if so, on which day? Like, this is the kind of, proto-chariot of the gods stuff that he's into when he thinks about the calendar. It's mystical to him.
I feel like I would get along with this person. This all sounds like stuff that I would...
He sounds lovely, right?
I would happily sit at a table and listen to him talk about this.
I am on his side, which makes his story very sad. To simplify his job at the railway, he comes up with what he calls the Yearal, which is maybe the name is the problem?
The name's the problem.
It's Yearal. Yearal.
Nope.
Yearal.
Nope. He needed... You know what? Branding is its own job. And you can't just think that because you are smart about calendars that you're also good at branding.
I'm kind of surprised there is not an indie rock band called Yearal.
Yeah, there probably is, actually. You just haven't heard of
There's
them
probably one
because it's a bad name.
There's probably one called Cyril. Yeah, exactly. They never got signed. Why is that? The euro works like this. It is not he's aware of the French Republican calendar and other attempts to do this, but his calendar, because he likes the even months, he cares about months more than quarters because that's how his railway wanted.
He likes the 30-day months.
And it makes more sense. Well, he wants 13 months of 28 days each.
Oh.
And the virtue of that is simple multiplication. 13 times 28 is 364, baby.
And then
that's closer than Robespierre got.
Right. Then 1 day of Festivus.
That's exactly right. So after your 364 days, you have year day.
Year day.
At the end of the year.
Yeah.
And every 4 years you have to have year day and then a leap day, like an extra year day, but that's fine.
Why not put them in July?
Well, the problem is, where do you put the extra month? Where would you put a 13th month if you could redesign the year, John Roderick?
Wouldn't you put it in the autumn?
Why the autumn? Like just
It always feels like the autumn gets short shrift. I feel like, autumn should be longer. Everybody likes autumn.
So you realize this is not going to prolong the weather of any of these seasons.
Well, I know, but it just feels like we were like trucking along. Spring, you feel like it unfolds, right? Spring is a thing that like, oh, it's spring. And, you get those first sunny days in February and you're like, oh, it's spring. And then, of course, you have to be reminded that it's going to be lame again for some period. But spring is this, sort of intangible, whereas autumn is so confined to like Labor Day, Thanksgiving,
back to school. Yeah,
you're in there. You put your sweaters on. There's a little bit of football happening, I guess, on the sides, and then all of a sudden you're like, back to the grind.
Cotsworth, I think, wanted to keep our normal months, our custom month. He was not a revolutionary like the French. He wanted ease of use and efficiency.
So he was January, February, March. It was just they were 28 days.
Yeah, and he wants to insert an additional 28-day month.
And so where does it happen? Right after June?
Yeah, right in the middle.
Yeah.
Right between June and July, he was like, then we have Saul.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's a Jewish fella?
No, it's S-O-L, Saul, for sun.
That's probably right.
Yeah.
But that's very Northern Hemisphere centric. I mean, the Southern Hemisphere has very little Saul in June, July.
Unsol.
They would call it
Nasol.
Cold kangaroo or whatever. No?
Bad branding right there. Cold kangaroo, bad.
Cold kangaroo opening for Ural.
Hire someone that's good at branding. So I agree with that because then it kind of then autumn becomes more of I feel like then you're after Saul.
It just means the thing you've added is now kind of you've worked toward this pyramid in the middle of the year and you have an extra 28 days of sun.
Yeah. And then
again, it doesn't change the weather.
That's right. But but I do feel like it contextualizes autumn in a better way. I support this.
I don't know if he cares about the aesthetics, but like the advantages of this are pretty clear. If you think about the implications of a 28-day month, first of all, it's 1 through 28. The first of every month is, in his conception, a Sunday.
Okay.
Which means the first is all you can know immediately. You can see a date and be like, oh, the 11th. That's always a Wednesday.
Well, now this sort of presents an interesting question. Like, does the nature of Ramadan moving through the calendar change your interaction with it? Yes, it does. Does the fact that every Sunday could potentially be somewhere else in the calendar, does it make it? It makes it very confusing, but does it make it?
Well, that's a funny thing.
Better.
Like, he was actually one of the main interests in calendar reform at this time was that pesky Easter. People were so tired of Easter just popping up like a whack-a-mole when you least expected it.
Easter popping up like a whack-a-mole. It's right there on the title page of the Bible.
Could be in early March.
Yep.
Could be in mid-April.
Yep.
Who even knows?
Yep.
And there were literally communiques and conferences and academic writing on how we fix Easter involving, the Archbishop of Canterbury.
They should have fixed this at the Council of Nicaea. I've said that for years.
They had a chance, and everybody just wanted to go home early. Should we do Easter or should we wait till
blah, blah,
Trent?
blah, the moon.
And, in his conception, we'll just fix Easter on the second Sunday in April. No problem.
Wait a minute. A fixed Easter is what you're saying.
Yeah. Efficient Easter. You always know where the bunny is going to be and when. It no longer has anything to do with the moon. And you're saying, this is the kind of thing we would remove some of the Ramadan-like mystery and drama of the liturgical year.
Well, yeah, but doesn't God have a say here? I feel like God had a plan and it was written down a long time ago. And who's this guy to fix Easter?
I wonder if it comes out of the idea that, kind of this post-deist idea that, God's orbs are perfect.
Yeah.
If our math looks screwy, it's because we are not understanding the orbs correctly.
Well, because Julius Caesar had some dumb thing about himself.
Exactly. And then Pope Gregory, we're just getting closer and closer to the actual understanding of the orbs.
Oh, so yeah, right. You're learning about the orbs. You're realizing that orbs are real. First of all, I'm here to tell you, orbs are real.
We know how they move, not the old mythology about how they move.
And hashtag science.
Exactly.
Okay.
In this house, science is real. I mean, the guy was interested. He was one of these amateur scientists. He was an early believer in continental drift.
Best kind.
Although for the wrong reasons. He was sure that the evidence that the continents were moving was that it was a super racist one.
It wasn't that they were on the backs of tortoises?
His evidence was, most people were
Africa was trying to get away from the rest of the world.
Most people were like, hey, I looked at the map and Africa and South America seem to fit together. Therefore, he was more like, look, people in the Middle East used to be super up on things. They had monotheism, Hammurabi's Code, bronze. Those people were killing it.
Yeah.
And today, look at these lazy Turks we have over there. Like it was just 19th century racism. So clearly, it used to be warmer there, and the Middle East moved. Like his idea of continental drift is continents are moving into more or less tropical zones.
Creating more stupid people?
Thus affecting the productivity of their inhabitants.
Well, did he know that the Turks weren't from Arabia? I mean, that's key.
I mean, there's many problems here.
Also, the Turks did a lot of pretty good work there.
Exactly. Yeah. And also you could look at any map and see that the latitude of these places had not changed, but that didn't appear to trouble him. He was, he was an early believer in climate change, but again, for the same reason.
Right, because the continents are moving around.
Yeah, he knew about ice ages, but he was like, yeah, continents are moving around. That's why they're getting hotter or colder.
But he feels like the continents are moving around on a pretty accelerated timescale.
Apparently, if it's like between the Bronze Age and today, they are booking.
Wow.
So, this is all part of his scientific, but what he really cares about is this 13-month, 28-day calendar. He thinks this is the future. He does not appear to be aware that the philosopher Comte has already suggested a similar calendar as part of his positivist philosophy.
I mean, I feel like I had come up with this calendar just on my own in about sixth grade.
If you just look at the roots of 365 and 364, you will immediately hit on 13 times 28 as a very promising outlook.
Yeah, 13 is my favorite number.
He writes is that true?
Yeah, because I was born on the 13th, and I've just always felt like it's a cool number, and the fact that people are spooked by it is all the more reason that it's cool.
It's a sign of your superiority to the normals.
Mm-hmm. I was born on a Friday the 13th, actually, which gives me the power to shoot orbs from my fingertips.
Well, here's a problem with Friday the 13th. If you start every month on Sunday the 1st, you will have 12 Friday the 13th in a year.
Kapow! Take that.
This is now your favorite calendar.
Take that.
Oh, sorry, dummies. I said 12. It's actually 13. You will have 13 Friday the 13th.
This is the best calendar.
Every single year.
Okay, now let me ask you this. If I started using this calendar, given that calendars have very little effect on me, how would it, if I just started sending messages to you saying,
Happy Saul the 8th, Ken.
Hey, the second week of Saul, I can't do our show. What would you say about it?
We have a test case of what would happen if moderns tried to just quietly start using this rational almanac in parallel, because Eastman Kodak did so for 60 years almost.
This is the greatest story.
So here's what happens. Cotsworth publishes his Rational Almanac in 1905, making the case for his 13-month year.
Where did he fall on daylight savings time?
Oh, I don't know if he even considered it yet. I guess they would already have had the time zones by then.
Yeah, but they would not have initiated daylight savings for another little while.
That's true. That was like World War I, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, well, anyway.
But it's irrelevant because he quickly gets kicked out of the UK. He starts agitating for union organizing at his employer.
Good man.
Just like today, they hate that.
Sure. And
just like today, he has to flee to British Columbia, which is what you do when your workers' co-op goes wrong.
Is that what happens?
That's invariably what happens.
Okay, British Columbia.
So he's one of these people that, how Canada will claim any scientist who ever came or left from there as a Canadian.
I sure do. It's right there on the title page of the Canadian Constitution.
He's probably on their dime. Next to some weird schooner because
he's riding a bird.
He lived the rest of his life in Western Canada. And now that he's in the New World, where where the 20th century is happening.
Right. The rivers flow with gold.
His rivers do not flow with gold. He pours all his money into over 60 pamphlets. He starts touring different community meetings and clubs, trying to build a grassroots case for his new calendar. He has to mortgage his house. But it works. There's a lot of interest, but if he talks to the right chambers of commerce in Paducah and Peoria and all these other North American cities, he can find lots of people who are like, yes, this would help with our books.
I say.
And is that their accent?
I say. We could get more efficiencies.
And in fact, Switzerland is interested in holding an international conference in, should we get rid of this old crappy Gregorian calendar?
Typical.
That's causing so much.
Typical of the Swiss.
The more processes start to get automated, like it doesn't matter if you're just hand inking a bunch of checks, but when you start automating these processes, and we're not too far away from punch cards,
right?
You're going to want the most regular, repetitive calendar possible.
Well, and it's absolutely the era where the last superstitions are hopefully being demolished and replaced with National Socialism, the good order of German superiority,
or the Third International and the Workers' Revolution.
That's right.
It's going to be one or the other. This conference is set for Switzerland in January 1917. Unfortunately, this is like a pandemic scheduling.
Yeah, unfortunately,
this falls through.
They couldn't get everybody there in time.
And maybe this is what happens if World War I does not happen. If Ferdinand never gets shot, maybe we are on a 13-month calendar today.
Is the calendar still called this terrible name? Yeri?
No, he calls it the Ural. Today we often call it the Cotsworth calendar. It's mostly remembered as the International Fixed Calendar. I think that's kind of what the pamphlets kind of center on. But he's poured all his money into this conference that never happens. And in the 1920s, he's living in a New York hotel room eating bread, cheese, and watered down milk.
Now look, I've done that, and it's not so bad.
You're saying this could have been the highlight of his life.
I don't know. I wrote an entire record living in a New York hotel eating bread, cheese, and water.
Well, he's like you. It's great for his productivity. Mm-hmm. He meets some kind of he meets a muckety muck somewhere. I can't remember where. Who introduces him to? It's a Union Carbide executive of his acquaintance.
Yeah.
Who introduces him to George Eastman, who is immediately sees the benefit and has his own company where he can say, yeah, guess what? I can be part of the solution, not part of the problem. From now on, the Eastman Company will do all its books on the International Fixed Calendar. 13 months, baby.
There is no nutty system that George Eastman wouldn't at least consider.
Happy Saul summer picnic, everyone.
And this was at a time when Eastman Kodak was becoming a massive corporation, one of the biggest of the mid-century.
Yes. And he's knocking on the doors of GM and movie studios and MetLife and Woolworth and all the big names.
Is he bolstered?
They're like, yeah, the Ural, yeah.
Is he bolstered by anything? Does he have an advanced degree? Does he have a patron? Does he have
Cotsworth?
Is there any reason why why General Electric would have this guy in?
Well, he's just a guy writing pamphlets, but once he gets George Eastman, that's when, once Eastman is like, this is the future of accounting, gentlemen, that's when the guy at General Electric will start stroking his chin as well.
The thing is, the Eastman calendar, I love that branding.
Do you think it would have caught on if it was like a captain of industry?
Well, yeah, Ural, boo.
Guess
Cotsworth,
what?
boo.
Eastman Kodak did not get rid of this 13-month internal, they didn't make their employees do it, but this was how they ran their books until 1982. And Reagan is president when the Ural is abolished from Kodak.
So they were paying on a
presumably on maybe a weekly or bi-weekly system.
But it makes sense. A 7-day week. They get the, well, yeah. How would you even know the difference? I guess it's because you're getting paid randomly if you were living according to the other calendar, the one we used, the Julian calendar. Your paycheck would be coming just like from outer space,
sure.
Right?
It probably doesn't trouble any of the employees how the books are being kept. But this is the legacy of Cotsworth's friendship with his new patron. And, thanks to this kind of movement at home, in October the League of Nations decides to hold a conference in Geneva in October of 1931 about new calendars. And this is where I think Cotsworth first does battle with his great enemy, an American socialite named Elizabeth Achilles, I believe, who is part of the World Calendar Association. And they also agree that the calendar should be modified, but they want to keep the quarter, which means what you have is 12 months of 31 days, 30 days, and 30 days respectively. So it goes 31 days hath January, 30/30. 31 days hath April, 30/30. 31 days hath July, and so forth.
Why can't they keep Saul as a special month? They do their quarters based on the 12, and then
Q1, Q2, Saul, Q3, Q4. It's like halftime.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Janet Jackson sings.
Something else happens during Saul.
So it does seem like a very minor disagreement. Can't these two get together and decide what the relatives, why can't the World Calendar Association get behind? But, like anybody with small disagreements, this turns into a huge schism.
Right.
It's like that Emo Phillips joke about the two different Midwestern Lutheran synods or whatever, like they have everything in common, but those small differences are what really rile you.
Yeah.
So for life, Cotsworth has to deal with his nemesis, Elizabeth Achilles, who outlives him. She lives till the 1960s, I think. So he cannot win that battle.
It's like the Council of the Council of Judea versus the Revolutionary Council of Judea or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or it's like it's any secular person's idea of the nonsensical differences between Catholicism and Protestantism that Ireland fights for, or the same thing in Bethlehem.
Careful.
No. I think we all agree.
Wrath of the Irish.
I was more worried about the wrath of the atheists. So 31, 30, 30, and then you get World Day at the end, I think. And as a result of this inter-calendar nerd squabbling, no agreement comes out of this October 31st conference. But there's a bigger problem, which you suggested, which is what are the more traditional or even mystical religions going to think about this new methodical way of marking time? And spoilers, they hate it. The Catholics will not sign on to the Easter Act, which fixes Easter on a certain date, systematizes Easter. And your big problem is Judaism.
Oh, right.
That was true in the 30s in a lot of senses. But here it's a very specific theological
Sure, because everything's spinning around the calendar in Judaism.
In Judaism, we all have many traditions have a 7-day Sabbath. But Judaism is incredibly locked into a Sabbath that falls on a specific day of the week. And the problem is if you have all these regular weeks, but then the weeks do not continue, the weeks reboot every year, there's a bonus day. Like that end of the year Sabbath, those 2 days would be 8 days apart. And therefore violate rabbinic law.
Sure. I would think that every Friday being the 5th or the...
that's all great.
Yeah, that's cool.
Everybody remembers Shabbos, but then what happens at the end of the year where there's an 8 or 9 day gap between Sabbaths?
Ooh. And you can't just have an extra Sabbath.
Oh, like in that week you would have like a mid Sabbath,
or do a double Sabbath,
or like a
you go to temple on Friday and you don't come out until Sunday.
You could do like what the French did and have like a half Sabbath in the middle,
half Sab,
like just a little half Sab.
Uh-huh.
So the fact that, there's strong religious objections from different bodies to systematizing the calendar just kind of kills it.
Yeah, but strong religious exceptions has not really stopped industrialization or the march of progress.
It is funny that in this one case, they were like, an 8-day Sabbath, we are going to kill this thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe that's just the excuse, and there was a lot of baked-in resistance to a new calendar for the same reason that there was when you try to implement the metric system, or literally any other, or tell people to wear a small piece of cloth in the drugstore. People are suspicious of change.
It does feel very much like everybody, all the different invested groups, just were looking around, coming up with reasons they didn't like it just because. And
like Europe using the Jewish religion as a scapegoat would not be unusual in the 30s.
Right. That seemed like
unfortunately
it was all the rage.
Cotsworth lived an amazing life. In the 30s, I guess, his papers are now in some think they're in some Yorkshire collection, and just remarkable stuff. He owned a calendar rod from King Tut's tomb somehow.
Probably not kosher.
Not legally. That, right? Speaking of not kosher, he went to Russia in the 30s to try to lobby Stalin about a 6-day week. He had a new idea for a different week length.
That seems like it would have been successful. I mean, lobbying Stalin for something cranky.
He was a true believer, this guy. But in 1932, he met with George Eastman about, what are our next steps? And I think tragically, how to get funding for, a new push for the Ural. And unfortunately, just days later, Eastman committed suicide.
Oh.
Eastman had been planning this for a while and had left all his philanthropic stuff in order, but unfortunately, he did not leave any funding for Cotsworth's calendar work, and so after a few years, he was broke again.
Oh boy.
He was able to schedule another League of Nations conference for 1935, which, due to the tensions in Europe, got pushed to 1936, and then, as you can imagine,
didn't get less tense.
Never happened.
Yeah.
So he was thwarted by world wars twice. And he died in 1943, still convinced that the International Fixed Calendar was the future. It's funny, we think back on these people as eccentrics, but in their time, they were the scientists. They were the innovative reformers. They were the ones pushing for a better world.
Right.
And, we think of them as cranks, maybe unfairly, just because he couldn't get along with Elizabeth the Cellist or, was super interested in the pyramids.
Well, when you said at the beginning of the episode that he was, an amateur scientist, I feel like the amateur scientist has been discredited by so many terrible amateur scientists who are not even trying to use science. But the tradition of the amateur scientist that actually is trying to use science, believes in science and understands the methods of science.
Not in it to make a buck.
Right, but in it to not in it to have a fake PhD from a Tuscaloosa Bible college, but actually to be a scientist on their own. They've advanced progress a thousand ways. They were the original scientists, and I wish there were more.
The movement's not quite dead. In the process of reading up on Cotsworth, I discovered the New Calendar, NU, at newcalendar.org.
Oh, I thought it was going to be Noi Calendar,
No, it's like new metal.
Yeah. Ooh, is there an umlaut?
It's a calendar, but there's a 13th month with a wrap in the middle.
Uh-huh.
No, it's what is going on here? It's basically Cotsworth's calendar. It's 13 28-day months followed by year day. Hooray, it's year day. But it's kind of
year day, yo.
No, it combines the French Revolution thing of secularizing everything. So the months are no longer named for pagan gods. The months are now named for the continents. Africa on Monday, all the way through Antarctica on Sunday, and the months have been renamed for different virtues relating to human rights. The year begins with the month of equality and impartiality, and moves on through the month of life and nature, the month of integrity and health, the month of migrations and travels, identities and diversities, work and entrepreneurship. Look how they threw a bone to two different demographics there. Month of peace and security, freedom and democracy, education and knowledge, the month of justice and redistribution. Whoa.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's going to happen.
How does that equate with the industry and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, what happened to entrepreneurship? October would be welfare and progress. Then November is family and fraternity. December, ideals and beliefs. So there's some nod to, the month that used to have Christmas is still the one about ideals and beliefs as you understand them.
Can I jump in here and say that sucks? That all of that sucks. Every one of those ideas sucks. That's going to doom this. All of that, that hand-wringing, wet hanky stuff in this new calendar. Things ought to be called things like, the months ought to be called like steel and dirt and air and water. Like things that are elemental.
Well, we're recording this on a Wednesday, just, after the middle of the year, which means we are in the month of education and knowledge. I think today is North America, the 11th of education and knowledge. What, you think that sucks?
Sucks. And that concludes the Cotsworth calendar. Entry 283.JB0306. Certificate number 25901 in the omnibus. Futurelings, in the unlikely event that today on
North America the 11th,
North America the 11th in Social Justice Month of Dynamism year
of nice feelings and happiness.
Yeah, you're listening to this program.
There's something North Korean about the new calendar that I would like to institute.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Health in progress. Yeah. You can find all of our, I guess what would now be our very, very old-fashioned and weird senses of humor on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Omnibus Project. None of what we said or are saying makes any sense to you, I'm sure, but the melodious and lulling sound of our voices is, you're picking it up in your feelers. And, has this occurred to us that the show might survive into the future not as a source of information, but just as a kind of music, or that we're being heard as a stimulating kind of just like sensory experience?
What if we leave gold records behind and people think they're jewelry?
They're just like,
or just use it as a hat.
Oh, right.
They think it's a visual. We're the first ever podcast to be used for its visual properties.
People are like, omnibus. They make the best Christmas tree decorations because, of course, Christmas will survive. You can find some funny things at Ken Jennings on Twitter. I'm going to say some. What do you think it is? 30%?
1 in 10?
Yeah, 10% funny things at Ken Jennings. And you can find my funny things from 2009 to 2019 at John Roderick. Also at John Roderick on Instagram. Both of these things are dormant accounts, but go knock yourselves out. But you can email us, and this is an actual live email address that Ken's wife Mindy will look at periodically at theomnibusproject@gmail.com.
I read it too. I think you just don't read it.
No, I read the ones that you send me that usually are like, your friend John is a dork.
I do not send you those.
You can find me at patreon.com at John Roderick, and you can find our show, more importantly, at patreon.com/omnibusproject. Please look up Futurelings wherever social media is found. And you can mail us things, real life things that you have touched with your hands and hopefully not put any sort of anthrax powder upon.
Yeah, that's our number one rule. No germ warfare.
No germ warfare against us. We are nice people. Let us survive unto old age.
Is it too much to expect podcast listeners to abide by the Geneva Conventions? I don't think so.
Thank you. Well, that means that they can't use mace or tear gas, which does not apply to the police.
That's true.
So we want you to adhere to a more strict set of guidelines about the use of chemical weapons than a typical American police department.
At least to us. We don't care who else you're macing and tear gassing in your neighborhood. Just don't mace and tear gas us.
True.
Is that so hard?
Yeah.
Just 2 people out of 7 billion people on Earth.
Save your mace for your neighbors.
Mace someone different. That's the omnibus motto.
Send it to P.O. Box, not mace. Send gifts, friendly things, letters to P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington 98155.
Here are some fun postcards we have. Yvonne and Stefan maybe, were road tripping down the Oregon coast and listened to some pretty appropriate omnibus entries, Boysenberry and Mulberry. They were doing berry-themed omnibus.
But they didn't do the petrified forest of Neskowin?
Maybe they can do it on the way back.
Have we arranged our podcasts with hashtags that are geographical?
Oh, that's a good idea. So you know where to listen to which.
Yeah, right. Like I'm headed into Omaha, Nebraska. What
a fun project that would be for a listener who's not us. Make a world map of omnibus. Keep it up to date with new shows. Would it kill you? We finally added Yorkshire today. After listening to these berry-themed omnibuses, they decided to rank all the Northwest berries. The order goes blue huckleberry.
They seem ideal for this hashtag project.
Himalayan blackberry. You guys should get on this. Red huckleberry, then thimbleberry, then my nemesis, the salmonberry.
Yeah.
Then the dewberry, then the red elderberry, which has to be last because it's poison.
The Himalayan blackberry, of course, is an invasive species in the Northwest, although really thrives here.
Where were we?
Those blackberries are delicious.
We were walking by, we went to Germany to visit my wife's family this summer, and walking down this kind of residential street to get to the Lindt chocolate factory in Zurich, which I know is not in Germany.
Did you not bring me a big bag of those? How did you fail to do that?
We have some at home. I'll bring you some Lindt truffles.
I didn't realize that you went to Lindt and got the real Lindts.
So you think they're the same as the ones they sell here?
It's like Jägermeister. They put extra stuff in the German ones.
The Kinder eggs are different over there.
Yeah.
Anyway, we walked by this garden where they had planted in a row, just like we would plant raspberry bushes or blueberry bushes here. They had planted what looked to be Himalayan blackberry.
As a ornamental.
Crop. No, as a garden fruit crop.
Oh.
And I thought, you do not want to do that.
Yeah, careful.
Switzerland's going to be overrun in a matter of months.
It's like putting bamboo along your back fence. You're going to be sorry you did.
We also heard from, trying to read here, maybe Joshua? Is that a dot? Joshi? Maybe that's the comma on sincerely. He was in Strasbourg, France, which is...
which used to be not France.
It's, I guess, got a comic book and graphic novel bookstore, and so he sent us...
I think that's Joshua.
He sent a postcard of the most offensive Tintin novel, the one you can't get in the U.S.
Oh, there it is. Tintin au Congo.
Tintin probably should... Like many Belgians, he should not have been in the Congo.
No.
Because...
No, or Hergé should have maybe thought twice about that depiction of the Congo.
Well, and the funny thing is, that's one of the ones I think he redrew in the 60s, and... he should have known better by then.
Yeah.
So thank you for sending me an extremely racist postcard that probably makes my mailman think I'm racist. Now,
Belgium doesn't have the greatest colonial history.
We almost got through here without just randomly ripping on some European country for no reason.
Damn you, Belgium.
So we have Belgium and Bandon represented in the postcard.
And here's welcome to Old Town Bandon.
Bandon nice. OR. So yeah, why not? Send us postcards of your journeys. We obviously care. We could have ended this show already, but for some reason we're talking about Belgian racism.
Yep, that's right. This show could have been one of the rare ones that actually came in under an hour.
Oh, but were we close?
Yeah, but we were doing great until we got to the mailbag.
Ooh.
But this is the kind of fan service that, what's this bag right here?
I'm not opening that one yet. That's for the next show.
Oh, all right.
Delayed gratification. John's a one marshmallow child. Crinkle, crinkle.
No, that's not true. If you hang a banana from the roof, I'm going to figure out to use the chair.
Listeners, from our vantage point in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived. We hope and pray that the eventual catastrophe we fear may never come, or at least not till we get the calendar right. But if the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may be our final word. But if Providence allows, with all his spheres and skies and orbs, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.